Welcome everyone to the VLOGAN, a video blog for individuals in the disability community, those people with disabilities and those who love them. Today I'm joined by David Lundregan. You're going to hear me call him Dave. Dave is the business development officer at Park National Bank. But what he really is the face of their trust department. Dave and I have had a long relationship and have many mutual clients who decide that a corporate trustee is the right choice for their family and loved one. So I'm grateful, Dave, for getting together. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
And I
Look
don't
forward
know
to it.
where you are in the city, but it looks like there's sun coming in your window. And that's not happening here where I am. So
I am in Marysville, Ohio.
got it.
So
Got it.
tiny bit of sun. Not a lot, but a tiny bit.
Well, the sun's always shining in Marysville. Great.
Right.
Now, interestingly, though, you have branches all over, right? One in
We do.
Worthington. You're based out of Newark. Can you tell us briefly where you are?
Yeah, so we have offices in Columbus, Ohio at on Morse Road, Worthington, downtown, Reynoldsburg, and Pickerington. And from a larger perspective, we're all over the state of Ohio, with the exception we don't have anything in the Cleveland or Akron area. So other than that, we're all over the state of Ohio. We also have offices in Kentucky, North and South Carolina, and Tennessee. So that gives you an idea of our geographical footprint.
So, Dave, as you and I know, that sometimes families don't have a person that they can say, Logan, this is the person that I want to manage my child's trust when my spouse and I are gone. When clients ask me about trustees, I say, well, I need two things, or I think two things. Somebody who knows and loves the beneficiary, and somebody who's trustworthy. And then I
Mhm.
always caveat that with they don't need to be a financial genius, but they need to know that they're not one and a person that will seek help when necessary for accounting and financial investments. But sometimes people don't have that. And so that's where a corporate trustee comes in. So can you just kind of talk about your role with Park National Bank and then what a corporate trustee is in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So my role, Logan, with Park National Bank is I'm a business development officer, but really my role is to go talk to people. And in talking to people, I talk to people who are considering who would they select as trustee. And we talk about what does a trustee do? What are their responsibilities? What are the type things that they have to think about? And just walk them through those conversations. From our standpoint, we're really agnostic as to whether they choose an individual that they know or a corporate trustee. We want them to make the best decision for their family, for themselves. And that decision is different for different families. Some have people that are qualified, some have others that aren't. And when we talk to people about what does a trustee do, the first thing we talk about is you need to think from your perspective. You've got these assets, you're putting together a trust for some specific reason, and a trustee will have control of those assets. So from the very beginning, you want to think about, if I choose this person or this corporation as trustee, they're going to have control over all my assets as trustee. So how do I feel about that? How do I feel about the person I'm selecting, the company? How do I feel about giving them control over my asset? You also want to think about, as you're thinking about picking a trustee, you want someone who's going to understand why you set the trust up, what your intent was in the beginning, and will they distribute the property as you would like, which is written into the trust. In other words, you're putting certain things into the trust. Here's how you want to distribute your assets over time. And you want somebody that's going to honor that and make sure that they follow what you wanted, what your original intent was. And that's very important. And then some trusts have real estate, some have just plain investments. Different trusts contain different things. So you want to make sure the trustee understands the assets in the trust and that they're able to handle them and do things like that. But I think from a corporate trustee standpoint, we talk to people about some of the things that we see that we think are important from a corporate trustee standpoint. And that impartiality. You don't want to take sides in a situation. If someone has 3 kids, we're impartial. Chances are we don't know the 3 kids going into the situation. We can learn about them or whatever, but we're impartial going in. We have knowledge, experience. We got our trust charter in 1928. So we've been doing this a long time. We've seen a lot of different situations. And I've been in this business for 40 plus years now, and I see new things all the time. As long as I've been in this business, I see new things come up. I had actually a financial advisor from Florida call me last week with a new idea he had in terms of a type of a trust he might put together. And it was just something I had never even heard of before. It was a new idea. So, but chances are with our experience, we've probably run across things before and we know how to handle them and we understand what's involved there. So I think the other thing is longevity. Some trusts are put in place to last multi-generations. And a lot of people who are looking at potential trustees, maybe you have a sister or brother and maybe we're all in our 70s. And what's the longevity period for them? How long are they be able to do this? So corporate trustees going to have longevity. They're going to have successors, generations over time and things like that, and go on kind of in perpetuity. And then the other things you look at are investment capabilities. Who's going to be able to invest the money? They have experience in that. Park is a little unique in the fact that we allow for outside investment advisors. If you have a current relationship, we'll work with them. But we want the team or the grantor, the person setting up the trust, we want them to, when they sign those final documents, we want them to feel good that whoever they've selected as their team to run things well into the future, that it's somebody that's going to do exactly what they want them to do. In other words, they're setting up the trust for a purpose. They want to make sure that whoever that team is, they're going to execute on what they want. And I think corporate trustee, once again, we have a lot of experience doing that.
Most of my clients are going to be selecting a trustee to provide for and to manage assets for a person with a disability so that they can be eligible for government benefits. As Park National Bank, do you have a special team or unique background in working with special needs trusts, commonly known as special needs trust? As I point out a lot, special needs trust is a specific type of trust that keeps a beneficiary eligible, but it's not the kind of trust that we create. We create a third-party discretionary trust.
Yeah.
Do you have experience, or how do you change your modus operandi when you have a beneficiary who may not be able to advocate for themselves the way a typical individual who's a beneficiary might?
Great question, Logan. So we have Park here in Central Ohio. We have a team of 9 individuals overall, but 3 of those individuals work specifically with our special needs trusts. Several of them certainly have worked with special needs trusts in the past or whatever. We do have 3 people that do most of our special needs trusts. One of them is an attorney who has been in private practice, actually in this area of special needs trusts. And so she is a lawyer. We do not practice law. We do not create documents. We simply interpret documents from a legal perspective. It's nice to have lawyers on the team who know the laws and look at it from a legal perspective. But once again, we don't practice law. But we do have an attorney. We have another individual who's got 15 years experience as a trust officer working with special needs trusts. And it is really important that you have people with experience in that area because, as you said, there are very specific there are rules around everything. And if you don't understand those rules, you can potentially put somebody's benefits at risk. And that's not something we want to be part of. So we understand them. We have people with experience in those areas. And I was just on the phone last night with a prospect, and he mentioned ABLE accounts and just asked a couple simple questions. And while I'm not an expert in ABLE accounts, I know enough to conversation with people. There are limits or this and that and how they're set up. And we always recommend they go back and talk to their attorneys about that specifically. But sometimes questions about things like that come up, and we at least can respond and send them in the right direction to get the right information. But I do think it's very important to have people with experience in this area that can make sure that everything's going smoothly and we're following all the rules. And so we never put benefits at risk. That's very important, as you know.
Thank you for that. So can you explain sort of a boots on the ground? So if parents have selected you, Park National Bank, to be the successor trustee, and their child is an only child, and it's a child who communicates verbally but has limited ability to advocate for themselves, doesn't need a guardian, but is likely to live in a roommate situation, have government benefits, and need somebody to pay bills. What's that look like? How often are people from your team meeting with the beneficiary? Are they going to those meetings about benefits to make sure that everything's covered? Can
Yeah,
you
great
help
question.
understand that?
So what's really important is we're really first and foremost, Park is a relationship-based bank. And what we mean by that is we spend a lot of time developing relationships, especially at the beginning when things are just getting started and all of that. When we take over as trustee, the first thing we do is obviously read all the documents, make sure we understand all the legalities of it. But we have that meeting with the beneficiary. In the case of a special needs trust, the individual that benefits from that trust.
Hmm.
And so that meeting, those first meetings, it can take sometimes 2, 3 meetings. It depends on the details, what's involved, and then also the person's ability to sit through a meeting, right? What's their time limits and things like that. But in those meetings, we talk a little bit about the trust and what it allows for and things like that. So a brief conversation around that. So there's some understanding gained between the specific trust officer that's going to be working with that person and that person. And then in addition to that, there are conversations around how do you like to communicate? How often would you like to get together? What are your bills and what do you understand things to be? Obviously, the trust document's going to tell us things, and information we've gathered beforehand is going to tell us things. But those one-on-one meetings, that individual will be giving a specific individual at Park that they are to communicate with. They will be given a second individual that if they can't reach the first individual, can reach its associate person that they're able to reach. And they're on the phones all the time. They're not out and about in meetings, but somebody will be there to answer the phone and somebody will be there to talk to them and communicate with them. And those relationships become super important. I think of the words patience and sensitivity in terms of those relationships. Sometimes you have to have 2 or 3 meetings. You have to be patient. You have to learn how to communicate with that person. And all of us, whether we have special needs or whether we're other types of individuals, we all have ways we like to communicate. Our job is to figure out how they like to communicate, what's most productive, and then make sure we set and plan a place that works that way. So that line of communication becomes super important. And we want to make sure they understand who their contact is, who they talk to, how often they can call, which is really unlimited, how often they can meet. Once again, we have some people that like to meet once a month. We have others that really don't like to meet, but we still insist a couple times a year. So it's all over the board. But the
Hmm.
patience and sensitivity and those initial meetings, really important to set things off on the right path. But we want the beneficiaries to know who their contact is, how they communicate with us, and how they can get things done the way they want to get them done.
So let me ask you, suppose that you are a trustee for an individual and mom and dad have set them up. They're living in an apartment. Mom and dad are paying the rent and they have a caseworker. Does your trust team actually meet with caseworkers from the county to make sure that everything's covered?
They will, absolutely. Mhm. We want to know who the individuals are that interact with that person, our beneficiary, right? And if it requires sitting down and talking to them, getting to know them, and things like that, we absolutely do that. Mhm.
Great.
We want to know we want to know who's caring for them, and we want to know who are they calling when something's going on, who are they talking to, and we want to be part of that process because the more we understand how they live their life and who they communicate with, the better we can be as a trustee for the trust.
Awesome. That actually brings me to my next question. So suppose that we changing my hypothetical on you. Suppose that there is a brother or sister who is involved in the beneficiary's life, not able to take on the responsibilities of a trustee, but mom and dad have said in their roadmap, this person is important for that you talk with. What's that look like?
Yeah, honestly, Logan, that's becoming more and more prevalent. Once again, I said I've been doing this a long time, but we're seeing in a lot more trust, official trust advisors or people in other roles, or just family members we're asked to communicate with. In almost every case, that's a very positive thing for Park because we can gather information regarding decisions to be made about distributions or whatever. The more information we have, the better a decision we can make. So I'll give you an example. We have a trust now with a 33-year-old beneficiary, and she requested some money to go to Disney World. And in regard to the size of the trust, it was a decent size amount of money. And so in this case, there was a trust advisor, a brother who actually lives in California. We called him and said, she's asked us for this money. And he said to us, he said, gosh, our family, every other year we go to Disney World. We've been doing it for 25 years. And that is something we do as a family. Cousins go and everybody, and it's a big family get together. So with that information, having talked to the brother, we immediately approved the request for the money and made sure she was able to participate in that trip to Disney World. So there are real life examples where that information is very helpful. And we encourage people to give us access to people with information who can make our decisions more sound and make better decisions about distributions to the beneficiary and other things. So we encourage that.
Love that example. So oftentimes clients, when they come in to see me, will misunderstand what a trust is. And oftentimes they'll say, well, where is the trust? And they'll say, well, if there's no bank account, then where is the trust? And I explain to them that it's a treasure chest. But they still often will say to me, well, where's the bank account? And they don't understand that the trust can own lots of different things, but that money is not static, that it's invested. Can you talk about some of the unique assets, whether it's a house or a boat or things that you guys have managed in a trust, and then also how the investments are made so that we understand that the money is not just grow or sitting there actually losing money because of inflation? Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing to think about when in those terms is think about you and what you own. Just look around your house. And if you think about what people own, all kinds of different things, it's not just their 401k plan or some investments they might have at an investment advisor with an investment advisor. People own all different types of things. And oftentimes those things end up in a trust. To give you an extreme example, we have one we just brought in recently that actually has a violin in the trust. It's a collector, a very expensive violin, but it's what we call a unique asset. It's not something you see all the time. Mm-hmm. And so we have all kinds of different things that people own that come into these trusts. In most cases, the trust document will give you some kind of instructions as to what to do with those assets. For example, a trust may be set up. There may be a house that comes into that. We made the trust document say liquidate the house and then take those monies and invest them for the future for that beneficiary, but whatever. But there are lots of different assets that come into trusts. And once again, that goes back to the longevity question, us doing this since 1928. We've seen lots of different assets come in. We have experience with lots of different types of assets. We have connections out there, whether it's a realtor or appraisers or others, they can value those assets for us. And then we can determine what we do with those depending on what the trust document tells us to do. So lots of different things, lots of unique assets, and we're experienced with all kinds of different things. You'd be surprised.
Awesome. How about investing? What's that look like? You mentioned that there was a trip to Disney that was going to take a significant chunk out of a trust. Does the money just sit, or what happens with the assets if mom and dad were to leave a house, a 401k, and some cash from a life insurance policy to a third-party discretionary trust? What's that look like from a investment standpoint?
Yeah, great question. So I mentioned earlier that there's really two different paths it could take. The first path is some people have a relationship with an investment advisor. They've had that relationship for many years and they want to keep that in place. So certain trusts, we call them directed trusts, but certain trusts will direct us to use an outside advisor. So in those cases, we'll gather all the assets as trustee. If there's a house to be liquidated, if there's other assets that are be liquidated and put into cash or whatever, we do that. So we'll take that first step. Then I'm
going to pause you right there, Dave. Let me ask you this. What if the house is intended to be kept for the individual to live in?
Yeah, great point. We have a real estate group that manages real estate. We'll pay the real estate taxes. We'll do all the maintenance on it. We'll hire people to cut the lawn and all of that. So that happens all the time. There are people that have children that maybe have lived in the house their whole life and they want to keep them in there. They don't want to change things. And so we have a real estate group that'll take care of that house.
That's amazing. So almost turnkey.
Absolutely.
Great.
And as I said, we have connections where we landscapers and all kinds of people we have connections with that will service that house, take care of it, and do all that. On the investment side, also, it's important if we're going to be doing the investing. So we have an internal team that investment managers, and they have a process and everything. But what we do in the very beginning, once again, we'll look at the beneficiary of the trust. We'll look at the assets in the trust. And so each one of our trusts, we will create a strategy around investing based upon the longevity of the trust, the age of the beneficiary. If you have a beneficiary that's maybe 11 years old, their lifespan is expected to be a normal lifespan of 70, 80 years or whatever. We've got this money we have to keep around for as long as possible. We may be a little more aggressive on the investing in the beginning because they're very young. It needs to last. You have a long investment horizon. So you may be a little more aggressive in terms of stocks and things like that, as opposed to a 68-year-old beneficiary whose lifespan is limited and they have a short time period to use the money in the trust. Something like that, we may be much more conservative in terms of treasuries or government securities or things like that to protect the assets and make sure that they're in place for the time that's needed. So we do a strategy for each individual beneficiary based upon the needs of the trust, the size of the trust, and the longevity that the trust is going to be in place for that beneficiary. And once again, we have a team of people that do that. And we have about $10 billion, just over $10 billion in trust assets we manage for other people. So I'll give you an idea of the size. And so it's a pretty good size operation.
Wow. So kind of want to recap because I've a lot. I want to make sure that I understand it and that the listeners I can sum it up. So a corporate trustee like Park in particular is equipped to manage any asset that a parent might leave to a third-party discretionary trust, whether that is a unique antique item that might need to be sold to provide for the individual, whether it's managing day-to-day operations of a house or making investments based on the expectations of the parents and the beneficiary and the life expectancy of that beneficiary. And a corporate trustee makes investments and then actually pays for things, whether it's a trip to Disney or home maintenance or gas for a car. And that's all done by a team of professionals who have insurance if something goes wrong, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
That's amazing. And then I
Yeah,
guess
and I think it's important to point out that trusts are audited by federal auditors and bank auditors. So we have our in-bank auditors that audit us once a year, but we also have federal auditors called the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, without getting into too much detail, but we are audited by the federal government every year as well, the bank regulators. And so they'll pull files and this is what you're supposed to do. Is they read the trust and they check things, and oversight is important, as you might expect. And we welcome them. And so the audit's very important as well. So
yeah, amazing. And not imagining because it happens all the time. They have a child who's hours a week, enjoys the Olympics, but also enjoys their quiet time at home. And the parents' concern is that the child is not able to pay bills, keep up with, make sure that, the insurance is paid for. That's all done by this corporate trustee. Got it.
That's correct. Yeah.
And the beneficiary has contact with the corporate on your team, and that corporate trustee attends meetings because person is getting services through the county board. The corporate trustee needs to know that.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like there's a social work aspect to being a trustee in a special needs situation. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I do, because once again, our involvement is day to day in their life, right? And so there's definitely that type of arrangement. But we want to know what's going on, and we want to be part of that. I mean, be part of the aspect of their life, and so to make good financial decisions, you need to understand the totality of what's going on in their life, not just pay this one bill or not. I mean, we're involved in that when you're making financial decisions to benefit somebody.
Awesome.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of the things that we brought up, and then I will let you go. I promise to get on
Yeah.
with the good work that you do.
Yeah.
Times financial are watching my vlogs. Parents are watching my vlogs, and they've worked for years with a financial advisor. You mentioned in passing something this you directed trustee role. And if I
Right.
understand correctly, that allows parents say, we want Park National Bank to be the trustee, but the investment decisions and perhaps even the relationship of the beneficiary is with our financial advisor. Can you talk just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there are certain trusts that are written where trust is written such that it directs us to use a particular individual or firm outside of Park National Bank for the investment piece. So when that's written into the document, we will honor that. Obviously, it's a legal part of the document. So in cases, we will work with that advisor. We give you an idea. It's about 30% of our overall business here in the Columbus office. So 70-30, but about 30%. It's a significant portion of our business. And yeah, we work with those individuals and coordinate with them, coordinate transfers of money and all of that. And they continue to do what they're doing. They have the relationship with the family, and that continues, and it works very well. Like I said, it's 30% of our overall business. So we do it a lot, and it's seamless, quite frankly. Yeah, works well.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful. Well, Dave, can't thank you enough for con today and
yeah.
sharing what it's like to work with a corporate trustee. And actually, real quick, when I introduce people to you or people call up, they're actually going to meet with you, or who's your other colleague that you meet with people to
Yeah,
make
Chris,
that.
Chris Wohlheater is my partner, and if I'm not available, he'll meet with them. But yeah, anywhere we get, I meet with them and have that initial meeting, and depending on where things go from there, I'll introduce them to somebody on the team. We and people that, even though a trust may not be funded for 15, 20 years, immediately, it just depends. We still encourage you to meet with a trust officer and meet the person that's going to be making those decisions and get a feel for who they are and how they work. And so we encourage that. I set up those meetings, and the people we meet from Park, the better you're going to feel about your decision working with Park. And we want you to feel good going in, and we want you to feel like it's a positive experience, and we'll do everything we can to make that happen.
That's awesome. And I know
Yeah,
from you even mind if people interview more than one corporate
absolutely.
trustee.
Absolutely not. As I said in the beginning of this conversation, we're agnostic as to what their final decision is. We want them to do what's right for them. If
Yeah,
another institution, if it's a family member or whatever, that's okay. Our job is to inform them on how Park works and what we do. If that's the right decision for them, wonderful. If that something else works better, then that's we encourage them to take that path.
awesome. I hope you enjoyed this episode of VLOGAN. Please like, share, and subscribe so you can stay up to date with some of the latest news in the disability community.